Excuse me, young man. This line is for first-class passengers only. Caleb Thornton looked up calmly. His hand didn't shake as he offered his boarding pass. His bag was at his feet, zipped tight. His clothes were clean but plain. No logos, no flash. The flight attendant didn't reach for the pass. She narrowed her eyes instead. "This doesn't look right," she muttered. "Where are your parents?" "I'm traveling alone, ma'am," Caleb said softly. She grabbed the ticket, ripped it down the center, and let the pieces fall between them like paper snow. Gasps. A camera click. Someone whispered, "Did she just—" "I'm calling security," the attendant snapped. "You've been hanging around here way too long, watching people. Something's off." Caleb bent down, picked up his torn boarding pass, and placed it gently into the front pocket of his bag. His movements were quiet, precise, not afraid, trained. Behind him, a voice spoke. Not loud, but firm, older. "You just ripped his ticket?" A man in uniform, salt and pepper hair, military pins on his collar. "If that kid's on the protected valor list, ma'am, that's a federal offense. From the way he carries himself, I'd check twice." The flight attendant blinked, caught off guard. Caleb didn't say a word. He simply looked at her, one calm, unblinking glance. Not rage, not shame. Just the kind of look that says, "You messed with the wrong passenger and you don't even know it yet." The gate buzzed overhead. Security en route to gate B12. The crowd fell into a hush. What no one knew, not the passengers, not the officer coming down the terminal, was that Caleb Thornton wasn't just any quiet teen with a ripped ticket. He was a recipient of the Medal of Civilian Valor. And more than that, he held the final Clear Fly Anchor authentication code, a silent trigger linked to 42 federal airports. One code, 5 minutes. And $2.3 billion would freeze. At Telltales, we believe in justice that moves quietly until it shakes the ground. And Caleb, he was about to do exactly that. The officer's shoes tapped the floor with slow authority. "Step aside, son. Let's take a look in that bag." Caleb gave a single nod, calm as ever. He unzipped the top compartment, not rushed, not defiant. Just like his mom taught him, let them see everything before you say anything. He pulled out a wooden box, small but heavy, the kind lined with felt and a federal seal burned into its surface. The officer paused. "Is that what I think it is?" Caleb popped the lid open with a soft click. Inside sat the Medal of Civilian Valor, catching the light like a quiet reminder. Bronze, blue ribbon, engraved date. The flight attendant, Allison, took a step back. Her smug posture cracked. That doesn't prove anything. Medals can be ordered online." The officer didn't even glance at her. His eyes were fixed on Caleb. "You're Caleb Thornton, from Missouri. School bus fire last year. You saved 23 lives." Caleb didn't respond. He didn't need to. The officer's voice lowered, more respectful now. "I saw the hearing on C-SPAN. Congress gave you that medal. You walked into a burning vehicle, barely 14. "I had to," Caleb said quietly. "They were screaming." That stopped everyone. Even the gate agent froze, mid-motion. The old veteran from earlier crossed his arms and gave a slow nod. Allison, still clinging to her script, tried again. "Still, he was acting suspicious, staring at people, making notes." Caleb didn't turn to face her. He reached into his bag again. This time, a plain black phone. Locked. A single app icon glowed in the center. Clear Fly Anchor. He tapped once. A quiet pulse emitted. Inaudible to the terminal, but not to the federal grid it was connected to. The display read, "Confirmation, Valor Protocol activated, code. Thornton 221 linked airports, 42 countdown, 0458. Caleb slipped the phone back into his bag and sat down. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He was just done being polite about injustice. And the system? It had just been notified. 1 year earlier. The smell of gasoline still haunted him sometimes. That late October afternoon, the school bus hadn't even made it out of town before the engine caught fire. Caleb had been in the 4th row, earbuds in, scrolling through notes for a math test. The first bang shook the windows. The second snapped the driver's attention too late. Smoke poured in like a wave. Kids screamed. The driver, an older man, froze. Caleb didn't. He stood up before anyone else moved, shoved open the emergency exit, kicked hard at the side latch. His foot bled. He didn't care. He pulled the first girl by the arm. She was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Then another. Then another. The heat behind him was unbearable. He didn't stop. By the time the first firefighter arrived, Caleb had already gotten 23 kids off that bus. He passed out right after. When he woke up, he was in a hospital bed with blisters on both palms and a congressman waiting in the hallway. He didn't do it for the medal. He did it because his dad would have done the same. Lieutenant Daniel Thornton, U.S. Marine Corps, killed in action in Afghanistan when Caleb was 9. But his voice, still with him. You don't wait for permission to do the right thing, son. You just move. A year later, Caleb hadn't spoken much about the bus since. Not to his teachers, not even to his mom. He never wanted to be a headline. But now, sitting at gate B12, eyes steady, countdown ticking on the phone in his bag, he finally understood something his dad used to say. Some fights you don't start, but you sure as hell better finish them right. Hey, if you're watching this and thinking this can't be real, let us know where you're watching from. Because what happened next didn't just shake a gate. It hit the entire system like a warning shot. Inside the command room at Kansas City International, nothing seemed out of place at first. The wall of monitors buzzed with quiet updates. Arrivals, departures, weather shifts in Chicago, a delayed flight out of Phoenix, routine noise. Until a red banner blinked across the top of the central screen. Anchor override triggered. Clear fly system. Initiator, Thornton 221 location. Gate B12 authority level, full. Minor Valor class. 2 techs glanced at each other. Wait, that's real? That's Caleb Thornton, Valor tier, full override. Within seconds, the automated response sequence began. Gate B12's entire camera feed shifted to high priority status. Internal FAA nodes across 42 airports got pinged. Skynova's ethics compliance system, linked directly to Clear Fly, began shutting down. The local tower called downstairs. We've got something out of protocol from B12. You seeing this? Yeah, the operations chief replied, standing now. And this one's not coming from a pilot, it's coming from a passenger. Back at the gate, Caleb sat quietly, eyes steady on the floor. His phone screen no longer glowed, but the ripple had begun. Passengers shifted in their seats, uneasy from the sudden delay. The veteran who had spoken earlier stepped a bit closer to Caleb, but said nothing. Just stood like a silent shield. A young gate agent walked over, whispering to Allison, "We're getting system flags. Something about a federal ethics block tied to this terminal." Allison frowned. "That's ridiculous. All I did was report a kid who looked off." The agent's voice dropped. "That kid just triggered a protocol that only 4 people in the country have access to, and one of them isn't even old enough to drive." Allison blinked. Then, "He's bluffing." No one responded. A soft ding echoed from the gate's monitor. Boarding paused. A new message popped up. Notice, temporary lockdown. Flight deferred pending ethics review. Passengers started murmuring. Phones lit up. Something was happening. And somewhere in D.C., that one call, the system Caleb tapped silently, was already working its way up the chain. At 1:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a small desk deep inside the FAA's Ethical Aviation Division lit up red. The technician blinked. "Did we authorize a Clear Fly anchor pull?" The supervisor walked over, already dialing a second line. "Not today. Who the hell flagged it?" The screen answered for them. "Thornton 221, Minor Valor Class, Auth Code Live Tier, Override, Scope 42 Airports, Trigger, Passenger Distress, Gate B12 Kansas City, Intel. Jesus, the supervisor muttered. Get Homeland on the phone. Within 60 seconds, 5 terminals, 2 on the East Coast, 3 in the Midwest, received auto pings to begin passenger ethics review audits. Another 60 seconds, and $2.3 billion in inter-airline shared credits were frozen temporarily across compliance accounts. Inside the SkyNova internal chat servers, red warnings cascaded like a waterfall. B12 incident. CFIA youth trigger. Verify all crew behavioral logs immediately. Back at gate B12, Allison Greer finally noticed. Her device buzzed. A security alert. Then another. She tapped open the app, eyes scanning the message, then narrowing. What the hell is CFI auth triggered? Why am I getting flagged? The younger gate agent didn't answer. He looked at her the way people do when they realize they've been standing too close to a live wire. A man in a suit approached, earpiece in. He didn't smile. Ms. Greer, step aside. You're temporarily relieved from passenger contact until compliance completes the internal review. What review? Allison snapped, forcing a chuckle. I followed protocol. He didn't belong in that line. Ma'am, he said evenly. That boy has Level A Valor clearance under the Civilian Federal Network. What you did? It just froze 42 airports. You'll want to call counsel. Her throat went dry. Passengers were now watching openly. Phones up, recording, whispering. A teenage girl nearby murmured, "Is she getting fired?" Allison backed up, scanning for allies. But even the officer who had approached Caleb earlier now stood stiffly on the sidelines. No one wanted their name tied to her. Meanwhile, Caleb hadn't moved. He sat, hands folded in his lap. Phone silent. Backpack zipped. Just watching. Quiet. Waiting. Somewhere above them, an announcement echoed through the terminal. Attention! Due to technical disruptions, select flights are undergoing reassessment. Please remain patient as protocols complete. But the truth, this wasn't a glitch. It was a warning. Across the FAA command map, a ripple effect formed. Ethics pings, triggered by Caleb's code, began spreading through flight logs, checking crew records, past incidents, flagged behaviors. The system was designed to detect not just this incident, but patterns, hidden biases, systemic failure. And now, the light had hit all of it. All because a 15-year-old boy got his boarding pass torn and didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't threaten. He just tapped a button, and the country's entire air system blinked. By 1:22 p.m., 12 more gates had been locked down across 5 major airports. At LaGuardia, a captain tapped his headset in confusion. We're grounded? Why? Weather's clear. At Denver International, a SkyNova supervisor stared at a terminal full of red flags. Someone pulled an anchor at B12, and it's cascading. Meanwhile, hashtags began to trend. Hashtag B12. Lockdown had clear fly trigger had Valor override. CNN ran a crawl. Breaking. FAA evaluates ethics trigger linked to passenger rights system. Source. Kansas City. And inside gate B12, everything went still as a woman in a gray blazer stepped through the doors. She moved like someone who didn't ask permission. Dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp, badge already out. Rebecca Thornton, she said to the man from SkyNova Compliance. Mother, legal guardian, also Deputy Director, Federal Civilian Systems Oversight. The man blinked. Yes, ma'am. Allison's face drained of color. Rebecca turned to her son. Caleb, she said softly. Are you hurt? He shook his head. Just tired. Rebecca looked around. Her voice didn't rise, but the room listened. This young man holds the anchor key to one of the most sensitive behavioral compliance platforms in the country. His access was not granted as a courtesy. It was earned through congressional declaration. What happened here today will be reviewed at federal level. A beat. Then she added, and yes, ma'am, that includes your conduct. Allison tried to speak. She didn't finish her sentence. Passengers turned quiet. The veteran stepped closer again, this time standing behind Rebecca, like backup, like family. Rebecca gently placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Let's go home." And as they walked toward the exit, the screens above kept blinking red. The system had responded, but now the real consequences were just beginning. At exactly 2:06 p.m., a black SUV pulled onto the tarmac at Kansas City International. 3 people stepped out, 2 in dark suits, one in a crisp navy jacket with the Skynova emblem stitched near the collar. Russell Vane, CEO of Skynova Airlines, adjusted his tie as he walked through the side access gate toward Terminal B. He didn't speak to press, didn't wave. He was here for one reason. The security chief met him halfway. "We've contained the situation, sir, but—" Russell raised a hand. "Don't spin it. Where's the passenger?" "Already left, with his mother." Russell paused. "His mother's the federal deputy?" "Yes, sir. And it's worse. The code he triggered just flagged our crew ethics logs going back 2 years." Russell exhaled sharply, then turned to his assistant. "Prepare a formal statement, immediate apology, and pull the full crew manifest from Flight 3397. I want them off the schedule." "You mean suspended?" "No, I mean grounded until further notice." 10 minutes later, as travelers still lingered anxiously near Gate B12, the intercom chimed again. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skynova Airlines, we sincerely apologize for today's disruption. The crew involved in this incident has been temporarily removed from duty, and a full ethics review is underway." Then silence. Then a ripple of hushed reactions. Passengers started nodding, some in relief, others in disbelief. Allison, still standing off to the side, turned pale. Her badge access had already been revoked from the crew portal. She hadn't even clocked out. Inside a closed conference room nearby, Russell sat with the compliance board. His voice was low but firm. This wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a systems-level failure, and we let it happen in front of everyone. He looked around. "I want a provisional ethics board assembled by end of day. No excuses." Outside, the red alert on the airport monitor finally disappeared. But for Skynova, the turbulence had just begun. By dawn the next day, it wasn't just a headline. It was everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, the Telltales podcast. Even late-night comedians had something to say. A teenager quietly grounded the airline industry with one swipe? That's not rebellion. That's parenting done right. The Fallon Report. But the real story wasn't the drama at Gate B12 anymore. It was what came next. Clear Fly Anchor, the ethical surveillance system Caleb had access to, had been running quietly in the background for over 2 years. Until now, it had flagged incidents, but they were internal, quiet, buried. Not anymore. The override Caleb triggered didn't just freeze 2.3 billion airline credits. It opened the vault. Old misconduct reports long buried by HR teams. Whistleblower claims that were never followed up. Audio files from flight crews caught mocking passengers, some racially, others based on disabilities, income, language. The public had questions, and this time, they had receipts. A clip surfaced of a Skynova flight last year where a black passenger was denied boarding for appearing agitated, moments after he'd sprinted from a connecting flight. Another case. A veteran with limited mobility was told to try economy next time after asking for boarding assistance. FAA released a short statement that morning. "We are working with the Department of Transportation and the Civilian Oversight Network to investigate recent systemic compliance failures among multiple carriers, including but not limited to Skynova." By noon, shares of Skynova dropped 17%. 3 CEOs from other airlines held emergency press briefings, insisting they'd never received clear fly notices, a claim quickly disproven. And through it all, Caleb stayed out of sight. No social media post, no interview, no live stream. He didn't need to say anything, because the system he'd helped build was now speaking for him. And the industry? It was finally listening. The wood-paneled hearing room in D.C. wasn't what Caleb expected. No flashing lights, no chaos. Just 12 people seated at a curved table, folders in front of them. Expressions unreadable. "Mr. Thornton," the chairwoman began, "thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Deputy Director Thornton, for accompanying your son." Rebecca gave a quiet nod. Caleb straightened his posture. He wasn't sure if his heart was racing or perfectly still. For a moment, no one said anything. Then the chairwoman leaned forward. "Your activation of the Clear Fly system last Friday exposed a severe gap in how our transportation system treats minor passengers. You had full legal access, but you also showed restraint and dignity." Caleb didn't speak right away. Then softly, "I didn't want to be a story. I just wanted to board my flight." Some in the room nodded. One older man murmured, "That's the point." Rebecca tapped her folder. "We're proposing a formal layer within Clear Fly, the Passenger Fairness Index. Not just for minors, for everyone. Score-based accountability for crew and passengers alike, protected from internal suppression." There was silence, then a whisper of pen scribbling. A staffer from the FAA asked, "Will it be public-facing?" Rebecca replied, "Selective transparency, enough to deter misconduct, not enough to invite harassment." A senator leaned in. "Do you think this will stick?" Rebecca turned to Caleb. He answered, "If it had existed a year ago, I wouldn't have needed to tap that code." The room quieted again. Sometimes, the simplest answer hits the hardest. "Hey, what would you want changed if it were your child? Tell us where you're watching from." Outside the building, the press waited, but no press conference came. Just the echo of steps in a marble hallway, and one line recorded by a mic that caught Caleb whispering to his mom, "We're almost there." And he wasn't wrong. 1 week later, at 9 a.m. sharp, the FAA went live with a rare joint press conference. No music, no fancy intro, just a podium, a seal, and words that would change the way passengers fly. Effective immediately, the Passenger Fairness Index, PFI, will become a mandatory compliance benchmark across all federally certified airlines. This index will track behavioral ethics of flight crew and systemic service disparities affecting vulnerable groups. 3 carriers, Skynova, Airstream, and Central Coast, are now under provisional monitoring until they meet new transparency and conduct thresholds. The room buzzed, cameras flashed, but the tone was different. Not scandal, not hype. Resolution. Behind closed doors, HR teams across the country scrambled to update training manuals, onboard new evaluation software, and review prior conduct reports swept under decades of rug. And inside one conference room at Skynova's headquarters, Allison Greer sat across from 2 men in Navy suits. No anger this time. No excuses. Just a document. Termination of employment. Ethics breach Class B. PFI Compliance Order 11.4. She stared at it for a long time. "I made a call based on appearance," she finally whispered. "I didn't know who he was." One of the men replied, "That's exactly the problem." Across the country, the story began shifting. Less about the slap of injustice, and more about the hand that rewrote the rules. A local news anchor in Chicago closed her segment that evening with this. This wasn't about a flight gone wrong. This was about a system held accountable by a teenager who didn't raise his voice, but raised the bar. And somewhere in a quiet house in suburban Maryland, Caleb sat at the kitchen table doing homework, a quiet hum of the evening news playing behind him. No spotlight, no statement, just another kid who changed everything. It started with a memo, then a meeting, then a vote, 26-1. And just like that, a policy designed in the quiet of Caleb's bedroom and refined by a federal deputy who happened to be his mother, became a binding global standard. On a clear morning in Geneva, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, announced, "Effective immediately, All member state airlines must integrate the Passenger Fairness Index, PFI, into their operational compliance frameworks. Failure to do so will result in a temporary suspension of international route certification. That same hour, the FAA published its joint directive with the Department of Transportation. No carrier may continue domestic operations without full compliance with baseline passenger ethics standards. The ripple effect was swift. 6 international airlines, based in the UK, Germany, Singapore, and Brazil, requested immediate onboarding support. Airlines that once resisted external oversight now scrambled to adapt. Because this time, the pressure wasn't from activists. It was from passengers. From pilots tired of silent complicity. From crew members who'd been punished for speaking up. And from people like Caleb, who never yelled, never cursed, never threatened. He just pressed one code. That weekend, the National Ethics in Transportation Summit quietly invited Caleb and his mother to attend a private dinner at the Library of Congress. No cameras, no reporters, just leaders, thinkers, and a moment of truth. When Caleb stepped up to receive the engraved glass plaque for civilian valor and ethical reform, the room stood. Not because he looked like a hero, but because he reminded them what one should look like. A retired judge leaned in to shake his hand. "You gave the system a conscience, young man." Caleb looked toward his mom. She gave a small nod. He smiled. "I didn't do this to change the world," he said. "Just the gate." There was a pause, then laughter, the good kind. From the back of the room, a woman whispered to her husband, "That boy made more impact in one flight than half of Congress in a year." On Monday, the New York Times ran a Sunday feature titled, "The Boy Who Froze $2.3 billion and Thawed a Broken System." And in airports across the globe, a new screen appeared next to departure boards. Passenger Fairness Index, Flight Score. Clear, green meant ethical clearance passed. Yellow meant under review. Red, that flight wasn't taking off. And nobody questioned why anymore. It had been 6 months since the incident on Flight 3397. 6 months since a torn boarding pass became the key to a global overhaul. 6 months since a quiet teenager from Maryland helped rewrite how the skies were policed. Not by TSA, not by security, but by ethics. Now, Caleb Thornton stood in line at Gate 42 of Reagan National Airport. Same gate layout, same metallic hum of fluorescent lights, same impatient energy of people trying to get somewhere. But everything felt different. He wasn't wearing anything special. Just a hoodie, jeans, sneakers, no press badge, no fancy lanyard. He was just Caleb. He handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, a young man with wide eyes and a nervous smile. The scanner beeped green. Passenger cleared. Fairness score, 100%. The gate agent paused for a split second. Not out of suspicion, out of realization. He looked up at Caleb. "You're the kid, right?" Caleb chuckled. "Guess so." The agent straightened his collar. "It's an honor, sir." Caleb waved it off. "Just heading home." As he walked down the jet bridge, no one stopped him. No one stared. No one asked if he belonged. Because the system no longer asked people to prove their worth. It was now built to protect it. He found his seat by the window. 14A, Economy Plus. He didn't mind. The view was better. Across the aisle, a little girl, maybe 10, sat nervously next to her grandmother. Her hand fidgeted with the straps on her backpack. The flight attendant walked by. A black woman in her late 40s. Sharp, composed. She smiled at the girl. "First time flying?" The girl nodded. "Well, you've got a 99.8 fairness score. That's better than half my crew. You're gonna do just fine." The grandmother laughed softly. The girl's shoulders relaxed. Caleb smiled to himself. That one sentence, it would have meant the world to him 6 months ago. The plane began boarding. Overhead compartments clicked open and shut. Passengers shuffled in. No chaos, no tension. Then came the captain's voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 774. Today's flight meets all FAA and Passenger Fairness Index standards. And if you're wondering who we have to thank for that, he's in 14A. Heads turned. Caleb shrunk a little in his seat. Someone clapped. Then someone else. Then the whole front cabin. It wasn't loud, just warm. He didn't know whether to laugh or hide under his hoodie. The captain continued, "We're proud to fly in skies that are safer, fairer, and better because of people who didn't wait for permission to speak up. Mr. Thornton, this one's for you." Caleb exhaled, eyes glassy. From the corner of his tray table, he pulled out a folded paper, the last note his dad had written before passing years ago. It simply read, "When the moment comes, don't shout, just stand." And he had. As the plane lifted off, clouds rolled past like memories. He thought about Allison Greer, probably somewhere out of aviation by now. He thought about the Sky Nova board, now reporting to an independent ethics council. He thought about every kid, black, white, rich, poor, who now didn't have to be someone important to be treated like someone human. And he thought about his mom, back in DC, still working, still holding every agency accountable, even the ones she'd once helped build. She'd texted him that morning, "Don't look back. That sky belongs to you now." He smiled, watching the wings slice through a perfect blue. As the plane reached cruising altitude, he closed his eyes. Not out of fear, but peace. For the first time in his life, Caleb wasn't flying through a system. He was flying through one he'd helped fix. And maybe that's what made it all worth it. Not the headlines, not the policies, but the quiet. The knowledge that somewhere, someone wouldn't have to go through what he did. A kid like him could show up at a gate, hand over their boarding pass, and not be met with suspicion, but respect. A mom wouldn't have to fight to prove her child's innocence. A grandmother wouldn't have to explain why her family deserves first class. A veteran wouldn't be told to try economy next time. And maybe that someone is you, or your grandchild, or someone you once were. Because this story, it's not just Caleb's, it's ours. We've all been dismissed, overlooked, talked down to, told we didn't belong. But what if the next time that happens, someone like Caleb is already 2 steps ahead, rewriting the rule book before it even hits your row? Let us know. Have you ever been made to feel small in a place you had every right to be? Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what you would have done if it were your child. Or better yet, what you wish someone had done for you. Because stories like this don't just live in courtrooms or policy documents. They live in airports, aisles, boarding gates. And they begin again. Every time someone says quietly but firmly, "This isn't right." So maybe don't look away next time. Maybe stand, like Caleb did.